Welcome back. The Saudis respond. The Saudi government today issuing a statement slamming the U.S. Senate resolution blaming Jamal Khashoggi's death on Crown Prince Mohammed. Now, the Saudis also are upset about the separate Senate vote with bipartisan support that would end military assistance for the Saudis' war in Yemen. By the way, Speaker Paul Ryan, he's blocking the House from even voting on that measure. President Trump, he's been giving the Saudis a pass on the murder of Washington Post journalist, and he's also flat out rejecting the CIA's assessment, universally agreed upon, that the Saudi ruler was behind Khashoggi's death. Now, the Saudis, they took note of Trump's stance. Here's part of the statement that they issued. Quote, "The kingdom appreciates the prudent position taken by the United States government and its institutions regarding recent developments." Well, joining us now, Joe Sestak. He, a former Democratic congressman from Pennsylvania, and he also served on the Armed Services Committee, and he's a retired Rear Admiral in the U.S. Navy. And Admiral, I got a bunch of different questions from a bunch of different places, but let's first start off in the Middle East. For me, at least, I found it galling, the statement by the Saudis, taking us to task for having the temerity to challenge with possible sanctions what they did, but again praising the president, who's in complete out of step with every other intelligence that's out there that is basically giving MBS a pass.
You know, what the Senate wants to do and had voted for is absolutely correct. We have to keep in mind that the Saudis have not always been with us. 1973, the OPEC oil embargo. 2008, President Bush asked them at the beginning of our Great Recession to actually lower oil prices and refused. But the major issue here of why sanctions have to be placed upon them, particularly the Crown Prince, who has done such an inhumane activity to reach out and kill someone as the future soon-to-be ruler of that country, is that we have to keep in mind that at the end of this World War II, America came home, having defeated the horror of fascism, throwing off the economic slavery of imperialism, in the second of two very gruesome global wars in just 25 years, and swore that it would never happen again a third time to us here in America. So we built this liberal world order based upon individual and human rights, open and fair markets, fair and just governments, where we embrace the world's collective goods. And these were, Richard, our democratic values, that together with other nations who also embraced them, we prevented or stood up against wanton badness to these American ideals. It didn't matter whether it was Stalinism or human rights atrocities, dire poverty or the devastation of AIDS in the continent of Africa. And by bringing together in multilateral organizations and agreements those who had similar values, we convened the world under the power of our ideals, and we became safer, stronger, more prosperous, as did the world, and even more healthier in our freedoms. That's what this is about, with our failure to stand up, stop that war of support in the war in Afghanistan, and to sanction the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia.
So explain to me this, Admiral. How is it that Mitch McConnell, who's had the spine of spaghetti, has actually been able to stand on his 2 feet and say that he'll have a vote on the Senate floor on this against the president's wishes, but Paul Ryan, who you served with, who's going out the door in, 2 weeks' time, if that, why he won't even allow a vote for that on his watch? I don't really understand the math or the logic as to why Ryan wouldn't even do that.
The fact that Paul Ryan, with others, are actually standing with a president who is beginning the decay of this liberal world order that we built for our security by not standing for our values, I think shows the deficit in Washington, D.C. of people who had learned that lesson of World War II, what happens if you don't prevent these evils from rising up in the world. Our retreat from standing up against evil in the world is to our serious detriment in the long term. That's what this is about.
I want to ask you your opinion as somebody who served in a leadership position in our armed forces. The cases is relating with Major Matthew Goldstein, a former Green Beret. He serving in Afghanistan. By all accounts, there was, or by his own account, I should say, there's a suspected Taliban bomb maker that was, during his deployment, being questioned in custody. Apparently he had concerns that this person would go out and kill informants, and he killed him, shot him dead. Not someone else's opinion. This is what he said. Apparently there wasn't enough. This came up during, I guess, an application to join the CIA. This came out in a lie detector. There wasn't enough evidence to pursue it. He then went on Fox News and reiterated it again. Anyway, DOJ is now conducting an investigation and a possible prosecution. I guess on Fox News they were talking about this, and the president says he's now going to get involved. And there's real concerns that this could have, quote unquote, unlawful command influence and have the case thrown out altogether. First of all, as somebody who can, this isn't theoretical to you, you understand these are brave men and women who are going on the front lines for us, and you don't become a major in the Green Beret. They don't hand those out. But there is a line, isn't there? And certainly there should be a line for a president not to get involved. This is something the Pentagon should adjudicate themselves. How do you view this case?
Of course, Richard, there is a broad, bright red line where a commander, any commander, never intervenes, never comments upon what someone lower in the chain of command is by law supposed to do, is determine judiciality of what is to come out in some type of court-martial, or whether it's even a captain's master on the ship like I had to handle often. That is absolutely something that is never or should never be done. And the reason is that what I think is our greatest deficit in America today is the failure of accountability, where people, whether in political or civil life, in leadership positions, tend not to be accountable for oneself. Not for the word, but for the actual deed of what they do. But in the military, and we're far from, not perfect, but their accountability is really the most major principle that you live with. Knowing that the guy or the gal on either side of you is going to be accountable for staying with you when you go forward in some fight. I think that these Green Berets and others did so much more than I ever did in the military, even in my 31 years in Afghanistan and Iraq. But that said, the rule of law, international law that we signed up to, is something we are trained in and have to follow. And we have to step back, even in the amount of time, I guess, from when this first got revealed to now, and let the accountability of the system come out and determine what is right or wrong. Otherwise, we do what politicians always do. We are unaccountable because it's politically in your self-interest. And that's why I think what you brought up is such an important issue. We may not like it, but it is what keeps the integrity of the system going.
I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
All right, coming up next, it is a $4 billion project, and now it's got a whole lot of problems. The new Mario M. Cuomo Bridge spans the Hudson River, but now there are safety concerns about that new span, and also the tearing down of the old Tappan Zee. A lot to get into. We'll do that right after this.